You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Good morning. Welcome to Matt and Air on Air. Jane Matt and Air, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. We got a busy show for you today. Jim Santel, our friend and colleague and host of Amicus, a law review Saturdays from 9 to 11 a.m. across the Civic Media Network. Jim Santel is going to be joining us, a former U.S. attorney, also an acting attorney. He still does lawyer things.
Does he play one on TV?
He doesn't have to.
No.
Because he actually is an attorney. So Jim Santel joining us after the 9:30 news. Next hour, after 10 o'clock, Trisha Peterson is going to be here from We Can. That is Wisconsin Early Childhood Action Needed. We're going to talk about the Wisconsin budget and the compromise that has been reached as far as funding childcare here in Wisconsin. Not everybody's happy.
No, and I know that their group is not thrilled about this. And when we booked Trisha, this was before it was signed. But even though now it's signed, it got signed at 1:32 a.m.
Yeah, it was an early deal.
We're still going to have the conversation on what they're looking to achieve and what they need going forward, because this looks like it's just kind of maybe a Band-Aid at this point.
Yeah, it's not a fix.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term fix. Paul Noonan from the Acme Packing Company will be here after 10:30 to talk all things sports. Lots of Bucks news.
A lot of Bucks news. The Brewers are doing real well. They're doing better than we expected.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good time to be a Milwaukee sports fan.
It is. Absolutely. So stick around for Paul Noonan. And then we'll wrap up the show as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it's the Bull by the Horn edition. Calvin found this one. It's another good one. You want to stick around for that. That will come up around 10:51-ish. Just a reminder, we are all off tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 4th of July, so we are going to have a specially curated best of show for you.
Yes.
And as part of that, the Free Ticket Fridays is going to happen.
Yes.
Even though it's the 4th of July and we're not going to be live, we are still doing Free Ticket Fridays tomorrow. So starting with Pat Kreitlow at 6 a.m. from 6 until 9, and then our show, 9 to 11. Tom Hartman, 11 to 2. Todd Alba, 2 to 4, and Maggie Dawn, 4 to 6. Each of us will have a word for you to text in via the Civic Media app, and then you are in the running for a 4-pack of Milwaukee Brewers tickets, club-level seats.
For the July 11th game next week against the Washington Nationals. I keep on wanting to call them
The Generals?
The Generals, which is basketball, and the Senators, which is like a 1920s team.
Right.
Yeah. So, if you hear that word, that is a fresh word that is new, live. Like, you can text it in, and it's going to be happening all throughout the day. Get that Civic Media app on your phone to participate, because you can only participate through the app, and spelling does count.
Yeah, spelling counts. So they're not real complicated words.
You think not, but I've seen some interesting takes.
Well, and I think sometimes people are texting, and you make finger mistakes and thumb errors, as it were. Thumbers.
Oh, no. I got a thumber.
I had a thumber. Yeah, so I think that's sometimes how those misspellings happen. Speaking of the budget, we're going to spend a little time talking about, as you mentioned, Greg, the Wisconsin State Legislature did pass our biannual budget. Governor Evers signing it late, about 1:30 this morning. Governor Evers, after signing it, included 23 partial vetoes, including a provision that would have closed the Green Bay Correctional Institute. This is something that's been talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
Green Bay Correctional Institution should close. Evers wrote, on that much, the legislature and I agree, but it's not responsible to require to do so by a deadline absent a plan to actually accomplish that goal.
Long-term planning, folks. That's what it takes to get things done.
It's called looking at outcomes.
Yep. Yeah.
If we do A, what is B, and what is C, and what is D? It's called looking at potential consequences.
Yeah.
It's something I think is important. Is anybody surprised by this? I mean, when we talked about it yesterday, it pretty much was like, yeah, they're gonna do it. They're gonna sign it.
Oh yeah,
it really was never in question.
No, and there have been plenty of vocal Democrats of the Assembly and the Senate who were against this: Francesca Hong, Chris Larson. I assume, based on her conversation with Kelda Royce, she was not happy with it, but it did go through. One of the things that Senator Royce did talk about was budget repair bill, possibly next year, because we asked about the child care issue that we will talk more about with Tricia. So when it was reported, though, and I'm going to keep going back to this, it seemed like everyone was pretty happy. If you listen, Maggie Dawn talked to LaTanya Johnson, who sits on the Joint Finance Committee, and she very much touted that this was a good budget. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the best. It wasn't exactly what they wanted, but it was better than what was being proposed the week before.
Better than bad.
Better than
bad.
It mitigated. I believe her words was it undid harm that was going to be in that budget, and that's a consequence of bringing the Democrats to the table so late in the game. Had they done it a few weeks or a month earlier, we could have been in a different spot. But they waited and waited and waited until finally Dianne Hesselbein was invited to talk about it, and they got what they got. And so, I mean, it's not perfect. We know that. But I don't want to think about what a Robin Vos victory budget would look like.
Or a Republican governor.
Yeah, exactly.
If we had Eric Hovde sitting in the governor's mansion right now, we would be looking at considerably different things. Yeah. And one of the reasons I've seen this kicked around too this morning is, what's the rush? Why did we have to get this done? What's the rush? Why couldn't they have taken some more time? Yeah. This is tied into the federal budget.
Yeah, and I just saw a comment on the live stream. Right now we are talking about the state budget, not the national budget, which is a whole other nightmare to talk about.
That we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about the Wisconsin state budget.
Yeah.
So if Congress's budget had become law first, then Wisconsin could have lost out on more than $1 billion in federal funds to help the state pay for Badger Care assistance and then help hospitals offset losses from treating low-income patients. This is because of all the changes to Medicaid in the federal bill.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we have to get this done before the Fed finishes their budget, or we're going to be cut out of this additional money.
Yeah, because the federal budget is going to hurt. It's going to be painful.
There is a hospital, I believe it's in Nebraska, that announced this morning it is closing. It's a rural hospital in Nebraska that has announced this morning it's going to be closing because of the cuts coming to Medicaid.
And if a hospital is closing, and we discussed this before when we talked about the two hospitals in northwestern Wisconsin, it wasn't just hospitals. It was clinics, too, that closed. And we're going to see a lot of care being taken away from people, a lot of access to health care. And, folks are going to have to drive. I mean, some folks in Nebraska, I'm going to guess that hospital probably could be 30, 40, 50 minutes away.
Oh, more.
Which means you take that away from them. The next hospital may be hours away.
Yep.
So
it's interesting, too. I heard a comment. I was listening to Pat Kreitlow when I was driving in this morning, talking about Mary Falskowski, who is a Republican here in Wisconsin, essentially was going off on hospitals. And from what I gleaned, and again, this was when I was driving in this morning, she's got to say, hospitals are greedy. And we can't let hospitals be greedy.
So are lawmakers.
So are insurance companies.
So are insurance companies.
I mean, isn't there a lot of greed to go around?
So are the billionaires that they want to pass tax cuts for. I'd like to see. Okay, yeah. Show me what hospital is greedy.
Well, and if you want to start talking, I don't know. We never talk about cutting CEO pay. We don't.
No. We never do. In fact, if anything, we give money to corporations, and they use that money to, golden parachute. The banking industry, we bailed them out.
Yeah, it seems like a CEO is the one place where you can be a failure and still get a golden parachute on the way out.
Well, also, I mean, feel like you could cut the pay of some of these CEOs in half, and they're still going to be wildly rich.
It'd still be really, really rich. So what did Popcorn King have to say about the budget? Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, this is from WPR, acknowledged that Congress and Trump are keen on capping Medicaid. Quote, "Look, I would not necessarily have a problem with having reform of the system," says Robin, "but I think as long as it's allowed under federal law, the state of Wisconsin should be no different. we should take advantage of that by doing this hospital assessment. Unquote.
Let's do a hospital assessment. I'd love to do a hospital assessment. Let's look into our hospitals in Wisconsin and see what they need and see how important they are and see how they may need more hospitals around the area. But, that's not what Robin thinks. And that's not what he means. He's not about helping. I mean, we still don't give them new moms Medicaid after 60 days. So why would he think that hospitals are necessary?
Well, yeah, exactly. The Wisconsin congressional delegation largely focusing on the budget's permanent extension of federal tax cuts that were passed during Trump's first term in 2016. Brian Stile and Tony Weed took a little selfie as they were heading back to Washington to vote on the budget bill for President Trump. We're going to talk about that in just a minute and exactly apparently what the deciding factor was for some lawmakers who had been a holdout on the federal budget.
Yeah.
Might not be exactly what you expected.
Oh,
there's an interesting article in the New York Times this morning about the little parade of lawmakers that went and met with the president yesterday and the little parting gifts that they got in order to vote for the budget.
They're disgusting. They're not holding, and that's
They're working for us, Greg.
Prove it.
They're working for us.
Brian Stiles, my congressman, prove that.
Have you ever called his office?
No, because I don't want to get mad.
It was this close yesterday because we talk about it all the time. myvote.wi.gov.
And we really should, honestly. I mean, I was going to say we should call tomorrow, but they'll be off.
They'll be off. Yeah, well, that's another reason why I think they pushed to get this done so quickly is because they want to go home. But I think we should all call them and ask about that sculpture garden. That $40 million we're setting aside for a sculpture garden, a garden of heroes. I found more details about that.
Great.
So we'll share that coming up in just a little bit. Don't forget, Jim Santel is going to be here after the 9:30 news. Jim Santel, host of Amicus, a law review that you can catch on Saturday mornings from 9 until 11 across the Civic Media Radio Network, talking about the budget in Wisconsin, signed overnight. Governor Tony Evers off in the document about 1:30 in the morning. And now I guess the question is, we'll have to wait and see if Governor Evers plans to run for a third term. He said he would wait until the budget was done. Mm-hmm. Bill from Oconomowoc is on the line. Good morning, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, great show. I can't emphasize enough about calling these people's offices. One of two things will happen when you call. Most cases, you'll get a voice recording, which is just fine. And I leave a message that I need to talk to you. It's very important about your job because you work for me.
Yep.
But given the current state of our politics, I don't expect you to return this call. So keep doing that. Keep ignoring America and see how that works at the voter polls or at the voting booth.
I appreciate that, Bill. Yeah, call them. They ostensibly work for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ostensibly.
We pay them.
We do pay them. myvote.wi.gov. It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's meant to be used.
Exactly.
Stay close. The sculpture garden. More details coming up. A good use of $40 million of taxpayer money. You're listening to Matt Nair on air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
Good morning. Welcome to Matt Nair on air. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up in just a little bit, Jim Santel from Amicus, a law review Saturdays 9 to 11 across the network. Jim will be joining us. Going to be talking about a number of things happening with the Trump administration and immigration and citizenship and all of those things. So stick around for Jim Santel. He does a great job. You should listen on Saturdays, too.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a great time to talk about civicmedia.us /shows.
Yes.
Go to the show's website. You can find our episodes, all the shows that we have, but you can find Jim's the archives of his show.
Mm-hmm.
It is mini law school classes every single week.
So
and
good.
Last week, 2 episodes. There was 2 episodes. There was a Saturday and a Sunday. There's so much happening. So yeah, go to civicmedia.us/shows and download those episodes. You can play them whenever you like. Get them on your device or get subscribe to them as a podcast. All right, that's my pitch. I'm done.
Speaking of pitches, if you want a great article about the Wisconsin state budget, Dan Schaefer was up late along with Charlie Pittman, our news director, and other people in the Civic Media News Department. Go to civicmedia.us, click on news, and there is this terrific, again, article from Dan Schaefer on there and from other folks in our wonderful news department talking about the budget deal.
I'll make sure that article is also linked in the show notes as well, so
Great.
it's easy to find it.
Before we get to the budget in Washington, which they're still, Hakeem Jeffries has been speaking for like 5 hours. But we're going to talk about some details in a minute. Jean from Eau Claire is on the line. Good morning, Jean. Thank you for joining us.
Great show. I think there's been 151 so far with the great James Santel. Haven't missed one. Outstanding. Recommend it to everybody. Everybody could use a little lesson in the law.
Yep.
And government. And I just was wondering, well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for bringing up that important detail of why Tony Evers had to sign in the middle of the night.
Yep.
This happens to be a habit of people with R after their name going late in the evening, overnight, till everybody can't hardly stay awake. I think that's, boy, you got to sleep a nap or have a plate bed in your room when where you're working there. And also the important detail of losing funding. I think that's significant. And I've been between watching that, listening to what's going on, and watching our government, it is so unbelievable to me. I'm 70. I've watched for years. I'll tell you, I got totes full of notebooks of things that have gone on to get us where we are today, and it started in Wisconsin. There's hope for us, but right away, don't get depressed, because this is something that we're all going to do together. We have to do it together, and that is to begin organizing in small groups and getting people to run to get these people out of office, because we can do it, and it all depends on us. Tony Evers couldn't do it alone, cannot do it alone. People with a D after the name cannot do it alone. They need all of us, because really we need to be active, and we're important.
Yep.
And we can't just expect everybody to do our business. We need to help. Thank you so much. Keep up the great job, and really appreciate you guys.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you so much, Jean. And Jean is a great example. Again, she's in her 70s. She's very, very active.
Very. They know her. She calls. She
Which
talks
is good.
Which is great. And honestly, it's hard not to get so angry and frustrated and so just, because we live in this. This is what we do for a living. And I will be honest with everybody. I'd spend the past few days, weeks, have been hard watching this budget trounce through. That's why, for me, the Wisconsin state budget started this feels like a win. And
Right?
the Wisconsin State Supreme Court on the abortion ruling too. Those feel good. I feel like those are movements in the right direction. Are they perfect? Nothing's perfect.
No.
But this federal bill is something that we need to be very aware of, every aspect. And when it goes through, and folks who are like, these guys are great, we love them, when they start losing their benefits, when they start their
Hospitals start closing.
hospitals closing, their taxes go up, you got to remember where this came from.
But you know what, Greg?
What?
We'll all be able to go to a garden and forget all our troubles.
Only, Jane, if it's a garden full of heroes.
In the National Garden of American Heroes that we mentioned yesterday, this is in the federal budget bill, $40 million. $40 million to celebrate the 250th birthday of America next year. There's a great article in CNN from today about this.
Yeah.
And what this will require in order to make it happen. There's kind of a problem with a bunch of this stuff. Again, point A, what happens if we do A, then what is B, and what is C, and what is D?
Yeah.
We have one sculptor who says it can take 10 years for a project like this to be done right.
Oh, done right? They don't care
Done
about
right. Yeah. There are many ways to go about this. Doesn't seem like anyone has thought about this. This is not a well thought out plan.
No.
No, really?
And they haven't even started.
No, they haven't. And artists who want to do this and sculpt one of these statues, they only have until September.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be done by next year.
How
next
many?
July. $40 million.
Yeah.
But we have hospital closing.
Mhm.
We have child care centers closing. We have all kinds of other, but thank goodness we're going to have a Garden of Heroes.
Hey, to our MAGA listeners, because we know you're out there, you like to tell us what we look like. Make this one make sense. How is this a good use of dollars?
Please, I'd love to know.
Yes.
We got news on the way. Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome to Matt Nair on Air. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine, where you can join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Next hour at this time, Paul Noonan will join us from the Acme Packing Company to talk all things sports. Things looking pretty good for the Brewers. Lots of things going on with the Bucks. So Paul Noonan will be here to give us an update. That is after 10:30 news. Right now, he joins us every week at this time from Amicus, a law review, which you can catch Saturday mornings 9 to 11 across the network. Jim Santel is here. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Jane, Greg, always a delight to be with you, especially as we look forward to the 249th anniversary of our nation.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right? We have
Yes.
much to celebrate, even in the midst of our great and profound challenges, right?
Yes, profound challenges, exactly. I did want to do this before we went to the news, but I didn't get around to it. We had all these holdouts, of the budget in Washington. A lot of House members saying, no, I'm not going to vote for this. Is terrible. I will never, ever vote. And then, of course, their House band for the Republicans is spineless capitulation. That's just their band. It's because everybody caved. But apparently they didn't cave without some parting gifts. From the New York Times this morning, a clique of House Freedom Caucus members walked out of the White House early yesterday afternoon, seemingly adjusting their attitudes. Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee posted, quote, "The president was wonderful as always, informative, funny. He told me he likes seeing me on TV, which is kind of cool."
He loves TV.
Byron Donald says, did you show them what he signed for you? Oh, yeah, he signed a bunch of stuff. It's so cool. So they went in to meet with Donald Trump, and he gave them some autographed souvenirs, and they got to take pictures with him too, apparently, some of them, and then sent them on their way, and they voted for the bill.
You can get presidential M&Ms and pens and lanyards, all kinds of things, frankly, true of every administration. It's trinkets, it's nice, shiny things, and at the risk of again, overstating the simplicity of this, it is traumatic that our representatives make decisions based upon getting stuff that they can give their family members and kids. From the recent visit I had with the president at the White House, this is not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, no, this shouldn't be a thing.
I went to the White House and all I got was this lousy bill.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, let's turn our attention to other things. Let's start with Jim, the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision on abortion that came down yesterday.
Right. And it's a very significant piece of writing from our Supreme Court. You've got a majority, and it's authored by Rebecca Dallet, who is, again, among the majority. And she is taking up this 1849 legislation that has been the subject of a review ever since Roe versus Wade was overturned in 2022. Mm-hmm. It bans anyone who destroys the life of an unborn child, 6 years in prison, $10,000 fine. And the argument was, well, again, that's the default legislation. That's the law in the state of Wisconsin. A whole bunch of litigation goes on. Eventually, you've got a lower court that says, no, it no longer applies. And yes, indeed, yesterday, the Supreme Court agrees with it and says this: comprehensive legislation enacted over the last 50 years since the time of this initial piece of legislation regulating in detail the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how of abortion so thoroughly covers the entire subject of abortion that it was meant as a substitute for the 19th century near total ban on abortion. The bar is usually high for implied repeals. That's the litigation, that's the lawyer word for this, but the majority found the legislature had met that bar by entirely revising the law on abortion. It is no longer the law of the land. And again, we can move on. Plainly, the issue is not resolved yet. This simply, again, gets rid of the 1849 legislation and does permit abortion now to go ahead in Wisconsin. Will there be? Do we know about other challenges nationwide, including some focuses on amazing issues like when does life begin? And that may be resurfacing at some point, if not here in Wisconsin, around the nation. But this is a good decision. This is a solid decision. And again, it is premised upon a balanced and thoughtful reasoning by the majority.
Oh, I just want to reiterate this maybe with a little less lawyer speak. So
Right.
the court decided that the ban from 1849 no longer held because there had been so much legislation after 1849 that amended this measure that the 1849 law was no longer the standard. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. And so, for example, Justice Bradley goes on to say, all the legislation since that time, all the laws since that time have given us great clarity, and plainly, implicitly, and explicitly, they overruled what was done back in 1849. She says, who may perform abortions? Only doctors. Where can they be performed? Within 30 miles of a hospital. Goes on to describe all the things that have happened since 1849. And she says, every conceivable question about abortion has been answered by the legislature since then. 1849 no longer holds. The world has moved on. And again, 2025, we're now here in contemporary Wisconsin. Again, good news, not without its critics, obviously, but it makes perfect sense, not only in terms of the policy, which is all about privacy rights again, right? It's about bodies and decisions that you can make about your own body, privacy rights. It's that affirmation once again. And it also makes sense legally in terms of the way that legislation works and the ways that judges decide on how these things should come out.
The question I have, because I saw people said it in a roundabout way in the papers, is the 1849 law just rescinded? Is it gone, or does it still stay in the ether like it always has in the background? That's the question I have, because I can imagine with this decision, certain individuals in positions of power will want to do, I don't know, put things on the ballot for a constitutional amendment or do other ways of referring back to this law. Does that law now no longer exist?
The answer is, of course, it's still in our history, unlike our current president who liked to erase a lot of history. This, too, is a part of our history. It is still out there.
Okay.
There are really two answers to the question. One, it is no longer legally in effect, and so it is dead for that purpose. But, Greg, to your very good question, in a democracy, what happens is we have legislatures that can indeed resurrect issues and pass new legislation. We've got judges who can decide things in different ways down the road. That's the beauty and also some of the challenge of the country in which we live. But for today, once again, 1849, the restriction, the limitation, the ban on abortion in Wisconsin no longer exists. And what that means is now doctors and their patients can go ahead with the certainty that they will not be the subject of any criminal prosecution in the state of Wisconsin. That, once again, the privacy right that the Supreme Court has upheld.
Jim Santel is our guest. He's host of Amicus, a law review, Saturday mornings 9 to 11 across the Civic Media Radio Network. I highly encourage you to check it out. We're talking about the decision this week by the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the 1849 abortion ban. From what I understand, Jim, this decision just goes back now to what the situation was in Wisconsin before Dobbs fell.
Right, exactly.
So any restrictions that were in place at that point will still be in place.
Right, and again, legislators can tinker with all those kinds of things, but the whole idea behind what Justice Alito did back in June of 2022 was to say no longer a federal issue, no longer protected by the federal Constitution. So states, you figure it out. And that's why people went back and said, well, okay, back in Wisconsin, we've got this 1849 thing. Here it's banned now, at the invitation, candidly, of Justice Alito and the other justices back in 2022. Wisconsin has now answered his question and said, no, here in Wisconsin, the privacy right is still there, cannot criminalize abortion. It is legal in Wisconsin. We join that map of many other states out there that have done the same thing, either by a referendum, by a judicial decision, or by some legislative enactment of various kinds. You can do that all different ways. Here we have a judicial order finding the 1849 law is no longer in effect, and we can now once again embrace privacy rights here in Wisconsin.
Rebecca Bradley was the conservative justice who wrote the dissent, right? Boy, she had another meltdown.
Right. Rebecca Dallet wrote the majority, and Bradley wrote the dissent. And she has been obviously very, very critical, not only of this, but of new members joining the bench. As we know, coming up on August 1, we've got a new justice of the Supreme Court. Once again, you look at those kinds of comments. Judges, for the most part, when they speak at universities, sometimes they will comment generally upon their work, but judges speak from their written comments and from their oral comments during oral argument. These attacks that are personal in nature, that suggest that there is something more nefarious going on, they're not judicial, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on. And it is unfortunate at best. Once again, I'm being very diplomatic.
You are.
With Justice Bradley, Rebecca Bradley, that is, not Ann Walsh Bradley, Rebecca Bradley. Those kinds of comments do nothing but frankly bring more disrepute upon members of the judiciary. This is what Ketanji Brown Jackson's been talking about recently. When you engage in these ad hominem attacks, whether you're other judges, she's talking about the president in particular, what do? You send a message to everybody out there that, well, maybe I don't have to follow this because one judge or one president or one legislature told me that they're all crazy. Yeah. And that is a very dangerous thing to do. And so what Rebecca Bradley has done here does not help the rule of law in Wisconsin, and frankly damages it dramatically.
But it's also on brand. I mean, her speech the night that Susan Crawford won was, I mean, look, I don't agree with what she said at all, but even if I did, I'd be like, hey, you can't
tone it down.
You can't talk like that. Right. I mean, and also I was listening to Maggie's show, I think it was sometime this week. They were talking about this. Justice Dallet was getting flack for speaking at an organization, I believe, but Rebecca Bradley spoke at the RNC. Like this thing of like, I'm all for judges not being partisan at all. I'm all for judges, if they have to run for office, running as bipartisan as possible, but that's not the world we live in. But there's also something to be said about the way you comport yourself in the way Justice Bradley does, which is just visceral and mega and just to the hilt.
If you listen once again, as we all did at the time of Susan Crawford's election, and even you pull it up today, I suspect it's very much in the annals of this very broadcast here. When you listen to what she said that night, it's not simply saying, well, I voted in an opposite direction. It is way beyond that, and basically saying it's going to be very difficult for me to work on the bench. That sort of thing, even in terms of inter-justice collegiality, none whatsoever. And it is violent language that should be condemned. You're right, Greg.
Let's put on our big justice robes, maybe. Jim Santel is here. We're going to continue our conversation. Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Good morning and welcome to Matt Nair on Air, getting into our smooth jazz groove here. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, and the Calvinator on the board, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text at 855 752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. We are going to be off tomorrow. It's the 4th of July. So we will be off and running a specially curated best of show for you, but Free Ticket Fridays will go on.
Correct.
So you want to listen, starting with Pat Kreitlow between 6 and 9, our show 9 to 11, Tom Hartman 11 to 2, Todd Alba, we're going on the road, from 2 to 4, and Maggie Dawn from 4 to 6. We will have a keyword for you. You want to text in via the Civic Media app, and then you are in the running for a 4-pack of Milwaukee Brewers club level tickets when they take on
The Washington Senator.
There he
Okay, the
goes.
Washington Nationals
He
next
got it right.
next week on July the 11th.
All right. Free Ticket Friday is going to be happening tomorrow. So just make sure you download the Civic Media app and you're ready for that.
It will be interesting to see in the chat, like, because the chats come through with who will be listening
That's
while
true.
we're on vacation.
That's true.
Will you be listening, listeners?
No pressure.
No pressure.
Just send you a note afterwards and say, where were you? We missed you. Jim Santel is here, our friend and colleague and host of Amicus, a law review across the network Saturday mornings from 9 until 11. There have been a number of things happening in the courts, Jim, including giving parents the option to opt out. They're taking their kids out of classes that contain LGBTQ plus materials.
Yes, this is, we've talked about this before, and I think all of us looked at this and thought, please tell us we're not going to go in this direction. Well, the Supreme Court decided to do just that. This comes out of Maryland. It's a group of parents who are insisting on getting the right to opt out, to take their youngsters, their grade school children, out of those segments of their education in public schools where, horror of horrors, we might read a storybook that talks about 2 dads or two mothers, or the notion that everybody, regardless of who they are, is to be loved and cared for. And the Supreme Court decided, again, based upon religious grounds, not a surprise coming from the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
you voice a religious objection to your child hearing about stories of LGBT people. And in America today, you can demand, in Maryland and now beyond, in other school districts, presumably, you can demand that your child be taken out of that portion of the instruction where that school, that storybook, that school story is read or recited. It is stunning in its narrow view, but beyond that, one thinks about this more broadly. And there have to be school boards, I hope there are school boards and superintendents and parents across the country who are thinking about the consequences of this. Suppose I say, again, this is not true, but about me.
Sure,
Suppose
it's a
I say that
hypothetical.
my religion tells me, Jane, that you should not be in a professional position like hosting a significant radio show. You should stay home. And you should cook and you should clean. My religion tells me that. And I don't want my child to be read any story about Jane Matnair going to work and meeting with Greg Bach and being on the air or doing anything that's professional. My religion tells me that is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to go to my school district and say, you know what? I don't want Jane, I don't want John to be exposed to that. According to the Supreme Court, I've got a right to have my child opted out, and you can think about many other examples, but opted out of that kind of instruction. Religion, once again, not surprising. When you raise religion to this court, you get not a pass, but you get a higher appropriate, or a higher approval rating, if you will, from the court. And here you've got a consequence that is far beyond. It is offensive. It's offensive to the LGBT, to all of us, right? Interestingly, here's the other piece. If you want to do nothing else this coming 4th of July weekend, and yeah, you probably do have other things to do, pull up the Supreme Court decision in this case. It comes out of Maryland, and you'll see that attached to both Sonia Sotomayor's vicious, virulent, appropriate dissent, and also to the majority opinion, are color excerpts from these books. They very seldom do that. You can see page after page in the appendix to these opinions showing you exactly what these books are all about. I read them and I think, yes, what's the big deal?
And
plainly the majority thinks, see, this is what we're talking about. Sonia Sotomayor looks at this and says, this is how benign, this is how loving, caring, this is the lesson from one of the books that she attaches in particular, which is all about making certain that I'm still a part of the family in which my uncle is a part of my family getting married to his friend now.
Well,
And that's obviously, we can't have that in schools anymore.
Well, and
it's stunning.
we don't have a whole lot of time left, Jim, but I'm assuming because people can claim this now on religious grounds. What if I'm a non-religious parent? Can I go to school and say, based on my non-religion, I am pulling my kid out of this class which teaches Christian theology?
Right. Or even more broadly, it just talks about religions of the world generally, right? That's obviously the next case. It opens up this terrible door and once again suggests that local teachers and administrators do not have the professional responsibility to make these decisions. That's what they do. That's how we pay them. That's what they're schooled in. Let them teach. Again, not without some limitations, without curriculums. Let them do their jobs without this nitpicking. And if, in fact, there is a teacher who goes off in some other area, fine, you can remedy that. That is not this case. That's the problem we're now facing in America as a result of this major Supreme Court decision just last Friday. Schools open again in a few weeks. We'll see how this plays out.
Jim Santel hosts Amicus, a law review on Saturday mornings, 9 to 11, across the Civic Media Radio Network. Thank you so very much, Jim. Happy 4th of July.
Take care,
we'll
sir.
see you next week.
Happy 4th of July. 249 years. Take care.
Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.